Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Welcome back to our Petty Revenge series, where you'll hear stories about people achieving small victories over others. Sometimes it's not about bringing people's lives crashing down, my friends. Before we dive into today's stories, you have to check this out. The ultimate revenge on a boss. A lottery winner buys his former workplace and forces his ex-boss to wear a mascot costume. How incredible is that? This guy wins $149 million and buys his workplace just to spite his boss. Oh my goodness, that is God-level petty, my friends. In this episode, you'll hear 8 super petty revenge stories. The first is a short and sweet one about a road-raging Karen. The second is a controversial tale where the original poster leaves her cheating ex stranded on a mountain. The third one is a wholesome story where a big sister comes to her little sister's rescue. It's absolutely adorable, my friends. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit that subscribe button for future videos if you haven't already. Let's dive in. This happened a few years ago, but it remains one of my favorite memories. My older brother had joined the Marines and was stationed 2 hours away in a popular beach town for training. Since my mom and I loved the beach, we visited him on weekends when he had time off. After a great visit, we decided to head home. That weekend, a huge classic car event brought people from all over, resulting in bumper-to-bumper traffic on the freeway. Despite leaving early, we couldn't avoid the congestion. My mom likes to leave a bit of space between her car and the one in front for extra stopping room. Not enough for a whole car to fit, but just enough. While sitting in traffic, chatting about life, the car behind us blared its horn. We looked at each other, puzzled, wondering what the issue was. I turned to see a classic Karen, graying hair and a short bob, glaring at us and honking to move forward. Seriously, the traffic was so tight that moving an inch wouldn't have made a difference. Apparently, that inch was enough to trigger her road rage. My mom and I exchanged shocked glances, asking, "Where does she want us to go?" Karen mouthed dumb idiots at us and flipped us off. We decided to get petty. Since the slow lane was also the merge lane, she couldn't pass us. We started waving cars in front of us, slowing down to let 1 or 2 or maybe 10 cars merge onto the freeway ahead. Each time a car thanked us and pulled ahead, we high-fived in full view of Karen. With music blasting, windows down, we laughed, high-fived, and waved grandly at every smiling driver. We even smiled and gave Karen a thumbs up. She sat fuming, calling us every name in the book. Eventually, the lanes merged into one, and my mom and I took an exit toward home with little traffic. Karen was stuck on the congested road, dealing with bumper-to-bumper traffic while we cruised home. It was the most enjoyable traffic jam I've ever been in, my friends. This reminds me of a similar traffic jam I experienced years ago. The car in front of me stopped and let 10 cars merge ahead. At first I was frustrated, thinking, what in the world is this person doing? Then I learned it was an elderly woman in her 80s or 90s, being incredibly kind, waving and smiling as she let cars pass. You couldn't even be mad. She was such a sweet lady. Next story. This happened a few hours ago, and I'm still buzzing with adrenaline. I'm a 20-year-old female and have been dating a 22-year-old guy for just over a year. It's been nice, despite our differences. I love working out, while he's always been lazy and out of shape, though still good-looking, so it was never an issue. Recently, my friend was at a bar with mutual friends and saw him out with the boys, as he claimed. His ex and some other girls were there too. My friend assumed they just ran into each other, as he'd never been suspicious before. But I guess I was too trusting. She occasionally glanced at them and texted me when they got too cozy. I called him, asking what was going on, since he said he'd be with his friends. He brushed me off, saying he'd be home when he got home, then hung up. It hit me that I hadn't paid attention to his behavior, staying out late, ignoring my texts and calls for hours, hanging out with friends without inviting me, and being overly protective of his phone, claiming it was private. I should have called him out, but I was too naive. He got home at 3 in the morning. I hadn't heard from my friend or him, but I'd been plotting my revenge. A breakup wasn't enough. I demanded his phone, and when he refused, I said, "Then pack your things and leave." He's not on the lease, he just stays with me and my roommate, paying rent since the pandemic started. Surprised, he handed over his phone. I found a messenger app I'd never heard of, and sure enough, his ex's name popped up. They met almost every weekend for drinks and hooked up, exchanging inappropriate pictures. I was furious but had my petty revenge planned. He gave the usual excuses, "I can be better, I never meant to hurt you, I'm so sorry," and the classic, "I can change." I'd been waiting for that. I said, "Prove it. Come on my hike tomorrow. Show me you can do something I like for once." I'm manipulative when needed. I'd been planning to hike a 14,000-foot mountain, a 14er for those unfamiliar with Colorado. I aimed for Long's Peak but chose an easier one since he wouldn't make it. The hike was exhausting for him. We stopped every 30 minutes, making it a boring 8-hour trip to the top. He tried being nicer, but it was pathetic. I knew I'd never take back a cheater. At the summit he sat down and drank all his water despite my warning to save some for the descent. I took pictures as it was my first time on this peak, kissed him and said, "We're officially over." Then I jogged down. He couldn't keep up, shouting for me to slow down, saying I'd have to wait in the car. I replied, "Call a friend to get you, or better yet, your ex?" I'm writing this in the car, waiting for reception to post on Reddit. It was a long hike, so I doubt he'll be home soon. He has reception, and there's a water fountain at the trailhead, so I'm not heartless. I don't know what'll happen when he gets his stuff or where he'll go, but I'll update if anything interesting occurs. This post might be more pro-level than petty. Many commenters called the original poster a monster, saying leaving him on the mountain was cruel. But she provided an update. Her ex grew up in Canada with an outdoorsy family, learning basic survival skills. They camped and snowboarded together, and his pack had a survival beacon, paracord, knife, compass, first aid kit, emergency blankets, whistles, bear spray, flashlights, 3 or 4 Cliff Bars, and proper clothing. They started at 4:30 in the morning, summited by 12:15, giving him plenty of time to descend before dark. He made it back safely. So, my friends, what do you think of this petty revenge now that you know her ex is alive and well? Was it well-deserved, or was it harsh to take an out-of-shape guy up a 14,000-foot mountain and leave him there? Next story. 11 years ago, when I was 15, my 6-year-old sister was playing with friends at a small playground across from our house. It was a hot summer afternoon, and our parents weren't home. Suddenly, my sister came home crying, saying her friends refused to play with her. This wasn't the first time. Little girls can be toxic, and I was fed up with their on-and-off friendship games. I stepped onto the porch and shouted, asking why they wouldn't play with her. The girls giggled, saying, "We don't have to play with her if we don't want to, and yeah, we just don't feel like it." My sister sobbed as I sat her down with an ice cream. While she ate, I planned my revenge. I gathered all our water toys from the attic, not inflatables but water guns, and filled them up. I also filled a bucket with water balloons, every kid's favorite. I worked fast, worried the girls would leave, but they were still at the playground. I placed the water guns and balloon bucket in front of our yard, where the girls could see them, and announced loudly, "Sis, go get changed, we're having a huge water fight." The excitement on my sister's face was unforgettable. We put on swimsuits and started playing, laughing louder than ever to ensure the neighborhood knew we were having a blast. My sister was full of joy. The 2 girls stood there staring. I waved and said, "Oh boy, we're having so much fun." Soon they walked over and asked to join. I grabbed my sister's hand, walked toward them and said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you." "What were you saying?" They repeated awkwardly, "We said if you let us join your water warfare, we promised to play with your sister more." I smiled, having baited them into those magic words. I put my finger on my chin, pretended to think, and said, "I'm sorry, we don't have to play with you if we don't want to." Then we went back to playing. I still remember their faces, but the best memory is my sister's laughter. What a wholesome, petty revenge. When I first read this, I thought the original poster would soak those kids with water balloons, but this was so much better. It brings a smile to my face. She definitely earns the Sister of the Year award. Next story. So, I'm a bartender, and the area I work in is upper class and petty as heck. As I tell people all the time, I don't go out there, I just work there. One random night, not too long ago, I'm making drinks for servers to take to their customers at their tables, while the other bartenders handle our bar-top guests. It's the middle of our rush, and one of my servers comes back with a glass that's a quarter full. She sets it down, saying that the customer hates it and is demanding a different drink. Specifically, they wanted a vodka mojito. I was too busy to put up a fight, and the poor girl looked run down already from the night, so I went ahead and made it, even though it was obvious the woman was just looking for a free drink. The server runs the drink back to the table, which happens to be the table closest to me, so I can see and hear everything. She sets it down and hurries off to another table, waving her down. I watch as this woman slams the drink until there's nothing but mint and ice left in the glass, with maybe half an ounce of liquid in the bottom. She then turns around, grabs the server again, and says, I specifically asked for this with vodka." The server tells her, "Yes, ma'am, it is with vodka." The woman replies, "I know what vodka tastes like, and this is clearly rum." Tell your bartender to make it right this time because I'm not paying for this." The server tried to say something but was rudely cut off and told to get it remade again. So, she picks up the glass and walks over to me. She says, "I'm so sorry, OP." I immediately tell her, "It's okay. I saw the whole thing." I said, "Girl, don't worry, I got you." So, I remade the woman's drink. 1 virgin mojito coming up, nothing but mint, lime, simple syrup, and soda water. I cannot explain the satisfaction we both felt when the drink hit the table. We watched the woman sip it and say, "Now that is vodka. You get what you pay for." Guys, that petty revenge was great. Now that's vodka? No ma'am, that's not even close. That's the satisfying taste of you getting served a virgin drink and having to pay full price for it. I wonder how many people actually try doing this to get free drinks. My friends, if you've ever worked in the industry, let me know if this has ever happened to you because I'd love to know. Next story, so let me lay out the scene for you. This happened about a year back, late in the evening. I was hanging out at my cousin's place and had to head home to feed my dogs. Let me explain our parking situation. Since I had taken the car out, there was a property next to our house that belongs to my father's brother. There is nothing constructed on it, but there are about 5 truckloads of dirt and mud, with enough space by the road for a couple of cars. That's where we always park our vehicles. As I reach home, I see an unknown vehicle parked in my space. I was visibly annoyed because this happens every time. Either someone parks in our space or double parks and blocks us in. So, I decided to serve some petty revenge. I carefully parked my car in such a way that I was blocking him in, but at the same time, not completely trapping him. There was enough space that, if he wiggled his car back and forth, he'd be able to get out without damaging any vehicles parked there. After that was done, I headed home, fed the dogs, and took a shower. Now I take long showers and had to dress up because I was heading back to my cousin's place. It was about 2.5 hours later, after I was done with everything, when I headed back down and got on my bike, ready to leave. That's when I saw someone trying to flag me down. I head over to see a guy, maybe in his late 20s, asking me if that's my car. I ask him which one, the one that's blocked in or the one doing the blocking. He gets annoyed and points to my car, to which I confirm that it is my car. He demands that I move it immediately because he was over an hour late for something. I then asked him whether this was his property and if he was allowed to park there. He said he knew the people who stayed in that house and they gave him permission to park there. The idiot was pointing at my house, and I know for a fact that nobody gave him permission to park there. I had the biggest smile on my face when I told him that the house he was pointing at was my house. This was my property, and he didn't have permission to park there. His face lost all expression, and he was visibly flustered. He then continued to demand that I move my vehicle so he could leave. I told him that he should have thought about that before parking on private property. Then I got on my bike and left. His face was priceless. I returned home a few hours later to find the car was gone. I went to check to see if he had damaged my car, but surprisingly, he left without any damages on the car. People can be so entitled sometimes. OP is so lucky that the guy didn't get malicious or anything and decide to leave a deep scratch in the paint. But, by scrolling through the comments, OP did mention that he took pictures of the guy's license plate before he enacted this revenge. Well done, sir, well done! Next story. This happened a couple of Christmases ago, but someone told me to post the story here, so here I am. About 4 months before Christmas 2018, my boyfriend at the time accidentally spilled a drink on his laptop and wrecked the thing. He couldn't afford a new one, and it was his main source of entertainment. So, I said he could borrow mine since I didn't use it that often. Everything was fine until Christmas that year. He still hadn't gotten himself a new laptop by that point, but I assume that's because he was saving up to get himself a decent laptop rather than a crummy one he could barely afford anyway. He handed me my gift, and to my surprise, it was a brand new laptop. I assumed that he bought me a laptop to replace my old one and was going to take my old laptop for himself. But nope, his gift to me was buying himself a new laptop so that he didn't have to use mine anymore. Nothing else, just that. I was outraged, but then a petty thought crossed my mind. Little did he know that I had come into a little bit of money, so I decided to surprise him with a top-of-the-range gaming laptop, which was easily more than double the price and quality of the one he bought for himself. So, I decided to give him his present. When he opened it, his eyes lit up, and he looked so excited at the prospect of a new laptop. But when he started to open it, I took it back from him and told him that it was actually for me. My gift was letting him keep his new laptop without me trying to use it all the time. Of course, we got into a massive argument that eventually led to us breaking up. Thankfully, we exchanged gifts a few days before Christmas, so that day wasn't ruined. I returned the laptop and used the money to go on a spontaneous holiday with my friend for New Year's Eve. No regrets. This petty revenge story reminds me of that one Simpsons episode where, for Marge's birthday, Homer gets her a bowling ball with his name engraved on it, and of course, she's never bowled in her life. With that said, that was a pretty selfish move on his part. Who the heck gives someone a gift that they'll end up using 100% of the time? Oof. Next story. Back around 2000 to 2002, my dad and a friend started a company. They put in the grueling and overwhelming amount of work necessary for it to have grown exponentially over the last 20 years. A couple of years ago, they had an opening for a technical editor, and my dad offered me the position. Every year during the holiday season, they, like most businesses, throw a holiday party. The first year I attended the party, nobody knew who I was. I tend not to share who I'm related to for obvious reasons unless somebody asks. It's not a secret by any means, but it's not something I shout from the rooftops. Anyway, the bar opened an hour before the party technically started, and since it's an open bar, a few people were already quite a few drinks in. I went up to get a drink, and somebody who I'd never met introduced himself to me in a pretty rude and arrogant way. I'm talking, you probably already know who I am, but if you don't, you should. He was clearly pretty drunk, but it's a party, and I don't blame him. I shook his hand and tried to walk away, but he wouldn't stop talking about how important he was to the company. I smiled and nodded and oohed and ahed for quite a while, even as he spilled his drinks on me from gesturing wildly. Eventually he told me, I'm also really close with the president. That interested me quite a bit because that was my dad, and I had literally never heard this person's name. Not a problem though, because I don't know all of his friends, but this dude kept going. Here's how the conversation went. He said, yeah, you could pretty much call us family friends. I said, really? You know his family? Oh yeah, of course. We've gotten together a few times. His kids love me. I told him, wow, that's pretty cool. I wasn't planning on saying anything because he was drunk, and it didn't really matter to me. However, he then turns around and says, okay, well, I have more interesting people to talk to now, and he walked away. I was livid. First of all, you spilled your crummy, dirty martinis all over me, and I smell like olives. You were kind of a jerk from the get-go, wasted 30 minutes bragging about yourself, and then told me that I'm uninteresting. So, I waited until the perfect moment when the party had started to taper off a bit. Our guy was still there, even more drunk than he was before. He eventually made his way over to my dad and my mom, chatting them up and whatnot. I sidled over to the group, and he gave me a stink eye, probably thinking that I'm trying to cozy up to them too. The look of horror on his face when my dad hugged me, kissed me on the cheek and said, hey honey, your brother is coming to pick us up. Do you need a ride? Was indescribable. He turned pale and looked like he was going to jump out of a window. It was genuinely one of the best small revenges of my life. In case anybody wonders, he and I laugh about the incident now, and it's not a big deal. It's a funny story that I like to tell. I love how that guy got shut down, and all OP had to do was wiggle her way into her dad's view. Guys, I would have loved to have been there just to see his face. I was reading through the comments though, and OP did mention that they now get along very well. So, hey, a pretty wholesome ending to that story. Next story. Years ago, when I was a youngster just starting to make my way in the adult world, I took a job at a machine shop. Since I was the new guy, and a lot younger than the rest of the crew, I had to put up with a lot of practical jokes as a type of initiation hazing. It was all in good fun mostly, so I went along with the jokes, knowing that the guys would give up after a while. I was right, and after a few weeks, when the others realized that I was a decent guy and they could rely on me to hold up my end of the work, they eased up on the teasing. All of them except for one guy. He was the shop troublemaker, and while most people got along with him, nobody really liked him. This fellow was bald as an egg, without a single hair on his head. Because we were an intellectual group, he was given the nickname Baldy. When the rest of the fellows quit their teasing of me, Baldy doubled his efforts and his pranks took on a mean-spirited quality. Tools I needed would go missing, or he would accidentally bump the emergency stop on machines that I operated, causing me to have to reset and reload the job. It got to the point that this harassment was degrading the quality of my work. Every time I called him out on it, he just told me to do something about it, trying to provoke a confrontation. So, I did something about it. I figured the best way to deal with this guy was to turn the tables on him, giving him a taste of his own medicine and making him look foolish in front of all the other employees. This was an industrial setting, so everybody wore the usual protective gear, hard hats, gloves, safety glasses, the works. At break times, Baldy was in the habit of putting his gear in his toolbox, topping the pile with his upside-down hard hat. When we broke for lunch, I filed out to the break room with the rest of the crew and then doubled back into the shop through another door. I went straight to Baldy's workstation and filled the bottom of his white hard hat with at least an inch of similarly colored half-and-half coffee creamer. I double-checked that a casual glance at the hat wouldn't raise any suspicions, then rejoined my fellows and had a very nice lunch. Break time was over, and we all went back to the shop. I hid around the corner, giggling, as Baldy geared up to start work. He picked up his hard hat and plopped it on his head. As he did so, all of that half-and-half ran all over his safety glasses and all over his face in a thick, sticky stream of goo. He stood there, sputtering and cursing at the top of his lungs, while the rest of the crew gathered around him, laughing and shouting encouragement. Baldy always hated me after that, but he never messed with me again. Nobody called him Baldy anymore, either. He'd always hated that nickname, but I think he would have readily gone back to it if he could, because his new nickname among the crew was Creamer. Now, that was a satisfying ending to a great petty revenge. These stories are a delightful mix of petty revenge and satisfying karma, and I'm all in for the clever ways people turn the tables. The traffic jam story is pure gold. I've been stuck in gridlock, and Karen's road rage over a tiny gap is absurd. OP and their mom letting cars merge while high-fiving in her face is hilarious. Petty but perfect. Karen stewing in traffic while they cruised home. That's the kind of justice I live for. The mountain hike revenge is intense. Cheating is a gut punch, and I felt that betrayal. Leaving the ex stranded on a 14,000-foot peak feels extreme, but the update showing he had survival gear softens it. He deserved the wake-up call for his infidelity, though I'd have just dumped him without the hike. Still, the image of him scrambling down alone is satisfying. The water fight story is heartwarming. As an older sibling, I'd go to bat for my little sister, too. The girl's cruelty to OP's sister is infuriating, but the water gun setup and we don't have to play with you comeback is genius. The sister's joy and those girls' regretful faces make this wholesome revenge a winner. Sister of the year indeed. The vodka mojito scam is classic. I've worked in service, and customers like that woman chugging drinks to claim they're wrong are the worst. The virgin mojito switch is brilliant. She paid full price for soda water and mint. I bet she's still clueless, and that's the best part. The parking space story resonates. I've had my spot stolen, and OP's strategic blocking with just enough wiggle room is petty perfection. The guy's flustered realization that it's OP's property? Priceless. Taking plate photos was smart, no damage, just humiliation. The laptop gift fiasco is infuriating. Gifting a laptop for himself? That's peak selfishness. OP's fake out with the gaming laptop is a masterclass in petty revenge. Returning it for a holiday? Smart move. The drunk coworker story is satisfying. His arrogance and lies about knowing the boss deserved a takedown. OP's dad's hug exposing him as the president's kid is perfect. No words needed, just a pale face. The machine shop prank is iconic. Baldy's relentless harassment warranted a comeback, and the creamer-filled hard hat is comedy gold. His new nickname, Creamer and Ceased Pranks, sweet justice. These stories prove petty revenge can be creative and effective. That wraps up another Petty Revenge episode. If you enjoyed these stories, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you missed my last episode, check it out. I'll see you in the next one. I love you.